Okay, our next speakers have both done work that truly stands the test of time. One in business and entrepreneurship, and the other is firmly regarded as one of the leading thinkers of our time. Her work has even become more relevant today, as very soon the United States Supreme Court is expected to overturn the landmark Roe versus Wade decision that has allowed women across the United States safe and legal access to an abortion. 50 years of settled law is about to go up in flames in what seems like a giant leap back into the past. It almost seems like a work of fiction, but it's not. I mean, no one could have predicted this coming. Well, except for maybe Margaret Atwood, the author of the dystopian masterpiece, The Handmaid's Tale. She works closely with the MaRS Discovery District to help founders who want to preserve the life we have. Together, they incubate big ideas. We're asking them both what it means to have access to choice and to have the freedom to carve out your own path. So please, welcome to the stage, Global Editorial Director of Wired, Gideon Lichfield, the CEO of the MaRS Discovery District, Young Woo, and the iconic author of The Handmaid's Tale, Margaret Atwood.
Good evening. Welcome to this very exciting discussion, which I am thrilled to be having, with two people who have known each other a long time and have worked together on tackling some of the world's biggest challenges, particularly climate change. And I want to start by noting that we are in what feels like a strange moment in history, where history almost feels like it's moving in two directions at once. On the one hand, we're not out of the pandemic, but we're learning to live with it. We've learned to make it a lot less dangerous. There have been huge advances in mRNA vaccines as a result. There are all sorts of hopeful signs. And then at the same time, obviously, we're possibly on the face of a global recession. We have the war in Ukraine. We have decisions, the possible overturning of Roe v. Wade. All of these signs of backsliding of liberal democracy. And one thing that you two share in common is that you are both optimists. And I would like you to tell me why. And whether or not the events of the last, few months or years in particular have shaken any of that optimism.
Margaret?
Oh, you're going to make me do this first. Okay. I'm really old, and I can remember when it's been worse. So I think one of the problems for young people is they got born into a time that was pretty good, rather than into a time that was pretty bad, like me. I was born in 1939. What does that tell you? 2 months after Canada entered World War II. So we didn't have a lot of choice. No, I'm not complaining. Yes, it was the 40s. We didn't have a lot of toys. We also didn't have a lot of vaccines. So polio, diphtheria, whooping cough, scarlet fever, name others. Those were all still with us. Smallpox still at that time. TB, antibiotics were just being invented. So it's been a lot worse. And I'm pretty optimistic because this pandemic really didn't kill that many people relative to what other ones have done. And it was dealt with quite speedily. I was very impressed again, relative with how quickly they developed those vaccines. So it is a Charles Dickens quote, best of times, worst of times, but it is not the worst of times yet. And we are still at a moment where we could turn it around. Over to you.
Thank you, Margaret. I've known you for how many years now?
Hundreds.
Yeah. It's still completely intimidating to sit next to you trying to answer questions. One of these days, I'm gonna have to get rid of that. But look, I've been an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur all of my life. And by definition, if you are in the business of creating something from nothing, you'd better be an optimist. I think we're coming out from this pandemic. People are tired. It's been a horrendous journey for families and communities and businesses, but we're also in what I think of as a period of transformation. In every single entrepreneurial endeavor I've been on, it's the ability to kind of get through what seems to be the harshest moments before the most miraculous things start to come. Now, I know that's not a scientific answer, Gideon, but it's an experience-based, kind of my personal experience as an entrepreneur and what I've seen other entrepreneurs and innovators through MaRS go through. It's the breakthrough moments, and I think we have a renewal and breakthrough moment right now. The choice is what we wish to do with this moment. It's the people in this room, it's your families and communities and your colleagues. Which way do we want to choose to go with this point of renewal, this point of breakthrough? And I bet on people. I always have bet on people. I don't remember the companies I've started or the companies I've invested into. I remember the people. And miraculous things are done by small groups of committed people. This is a time for small groups of committed people to do special things. I believe in that.
Yes, and so do I. We agree.
The choices that we're making, though, as a society right now, or as societies, I should say, are not all that encouraging. I mean, one of the things, for those who only know Margaret as a writer of dystopias, your willingness to believe in fact, a better future is really quite remarkable. But you wrote about The Handmaid's Tale, you've written other dystopias, you wrote an op-ed in the New York Times, I think not that long ago, arguing that in fact the imminent overturning of Roe v. Wade could be, I don't know, the beginnings of a path almost back to Gilead that you described in Handmaid's Tale. So do you think that this backsliding, democratic backsliding that we seem to be seeing across the world is something that we can turn around?
Okay, it was the Atlantic, not the New York Times, but yes. And
Sorry, yes.
I was writing about the originalists in the United States. This leaked opinion on Roe versus Wade was based on originalism. That is, it should be the original U.S. Constitution. Well, the original U.S. Constitution did not include votes for women. So if you really want to be an originalist and you're a female Republican voter, I would think twice about that myself.
All right, well, let's talk about the thing that you've both been working on, which is climate change. And as you said, I think, Margaret, the pandemic, well, actually both of you have said this, coming out of the pandemic, we saw what was possible. It sort of seems to signal, a sense of potential for the use of technology to solve a big problem. Climate is a very different kind of big problem. It's much less urgent. It's going to kill people, but it's not killing, well, it is probably killing some right now, but we are trying to make choices for future generations instead of for our immediate selves, and we don't seem to be very good at that. So to what extent is this a tech problem? To what extent is it a political problem?
We were talking about this actually coming here, and we were saying the following. I have this pal called Survivor Man. He puts himself into strange situations and then gets out of them with a couple of matches and a jackknife. Survivor Man, and he says, what you need is four things. You need knowledge and experience, you need the right equipment, you need willpower, and you need luck. And you can get out of situations if you have only two of those things. But if you don't have any of them, you're finished. And I would say right now, we've got the knowledge. We're working very hard on the knowledge. We've got all kinds of amazing new technologies, and those were the things we were looking at through the Green Tech Challenge at MaRS, which we'll talk about in a minute. We've got that. We've got the equipment. We're certainly building a lot of that equipment. It's the willpower that we are missing at the political level. And we're going to need the luck. The luck has been a bit iffy. So what I threaten young people with, I say, if you kill the ocean, there goes 40 to 50% of your available oxygen. And the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to get quite stupid, and then you'll forget how to use your cell phones. And that's going to be you, not your grandchildren. So you better get working on this now, if you want your cell phones, which you do.
So scaring the kids is the answer. All right.
Yeah, I think the kids are scared already. I think we have to go from scaring the kids to actually scaring the politicians.
Right.
They're not as
Well, sometimes
they're not as hooked on their cell phones, but they will be soon, because a new generation is going to come in to those political positions who have never known what it is to be without a cell phone. Just telling you, once there were none.
Young, can you talk a little bit about climate tech in Canada in particular? I mean, you just launched, I think it was announced today, an initiative together with KPMG. So what is the technology that we still need to build? Because it feels like there's a lot of climate tech around already. What are we missing?
So every day I get to walk into MaRS and visit with people that invent the future. And I think the most interesting thing about a place like this is, MaRS, by the way, is the largest innovation hub in North America already. And the innovators and the researchers and the entrepreneurs that crowd that place, especially now that we're coming out of the pandemic, have answers for the future. So on the one hand, you can say, oh my God, there's 50 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions being spewed out every single year globally. In Canada, that's 730 million tons per year. And you say, woe is me, oh my God, the sky is falling. On the other hand, we have actually looked into our ecosystem, and we found the top 10 climate champions across Canada. We calculated their impact potential in terms of drawing down emissions on an annual basis. And it turns out that we have companies that focus on big emitting areas like transportation, energy, and buildings. So I'll give you a couple of examples, because this to me is staggering. First of all, there's no pathway to net zero without embedding innovation into it. And one of the examples I point out is a company called Carbon Engineering out of Squamish, BC. We work with them quite a bit. So think about this. If we have been spewing out 50 billion tons of carbon into the atmosphere every year since the Industrial Revolution, that stuff lasts for hundreds of years, maybe over 1,000 years. We have to find a way to draw it down. Carbon engineering actually takes direct air capture of carbon, buries it underground, repurposes it for cleaner fuels and for materials and products that we as human beings need. A perfect example of how to take out carbon but also drive industry. There's a company called BrainBox. It's, like when you drive autonomous vehicles, well, this thing is an autonomous HVAC system. Buildings are one of the biggest sources of emissions in our urban centers. So BrainBox essentially operates your HVAC system autonomously and is able to reduce 50% of the emissions coming from your HVAC systems. There's solutions like this that when you add them up, they take out 1% market penetration takes out half of Canada's emissions. That's what gives me hope, because there's no way for us to just reduce emissions and get to net zero by 2050. We actually have to transform the future, and these are the companies that are doing it, and I see them every single day.
I loved one of the competitors in the Green Tech Challenge. It was called Women in
Right.
Green Tech Challenge, for which I was the judge. I was the only judge who actually didn't know what she was doing, but the others were all in the tech sector, but I was not. But as a consumer, I could look at things, and one that I really liked was a membrane used in air conditioning. No moving parts, didn't use any energy, and it took the moisture out of the air that was going into air cooling systems.
Right.
And most of the energy in an air conditioner is used to take out the moisture. So this membrane takes it out before the air gets to the cooling part, and that reduces the energy consumption and the cost by 80%. So imagine what that would do in all of the air conditioning systems.
Totally, and actually maybe I can build on that to point something else out. There's really an orthogonal topic, an orthogonal line of thinking that comes with that example, Margaret. You were an unbelievable judge for us in a Women in Clean Tech challenge. And it just struck me that the solutions that we saw coming from real diverse thinking, real diverse living, diversity of lived experience drives diversity of thought. That is incredibly powerful when it comes to inventing new solutions for things. Amanda Hall, who won the Women in Clean Tech Challenge, was an incredible winner. She's a geophysicist, comes from the oil industry, and is the talent that we need to invent the future of energy. So she's basically developed Summit Nanotech, which essentially takes brine fields from the oil and gas sector and turns it into lithium-ion energy solutions. One of your contestants. An amazing solution, and something that I think is amazing just to point out. It didn't just come from the back offices of Suncor. It came from an entrepreneur. It came from a women entrepreneur. It came from deep science, deep tech, and it's based out of Calgary.
And thinking about recycling, like taking something, turning it into something else that's positive.
Exactly right.
But it seems to me like one of the things that we're still struggling with is to really get that diversity happening. I mean, in the US, the proportion of venture capital money that went to women-only teams of founders, it's actually been declining over the last 5 years. It was 2% in 2021. Why is this? Why is it still so hard to diversify the field?
We haven't done enough here in Canada either, I would say. I believe that 30% of the entrepreneurs we're seeing are women, and yet they only attract 2% of venture capital. Now, we have some great new initiatives that are focused on women, that are built by women, invested into by women, and that are backing women. I think this is where it all starts, because I'm back to the whole thing about if you have a homogeneous line of thinking, you're going to get a homogeneous result. And we actually need to have synthesis happening from different points of view, different lived experience, and certainly gender diversity is something that we desperately need to inject into our innovation process.
Yeah.
Like, how can we actually invent the world of the future when the fuel that drives that is talent, and we're leaving half the talent sitting on the sidelines? That doesn't add up.
Right. Since we're almost out of time, I want to ask you both one last question. We've been talking about what it takes to change political will, what it takes to build technology for climate change. How do we change individual behavior? Is that even something we need to try to do? Some of us have been flying, the airports are crazy, the planes are packed, it seems like we're going back to normal. How do we actually change people's behavior?
Well, we're working on a project called Practical Utopias that we're launching on a new internet platform called Disco. It's a female-headed enterprise, by the way. interactive learning platform. And in practical utopias, teams of people will put their heads together and like building a Lego game, take building blocks that are already available to us now and try to build an improved way of living. So for me, you have to start with what people do every day. So what kind of house are you going to live in? Where are you going to get the food? What kind of food will it be? What is your energy source going to be? What kind of clothing will you wear? Have you heard of mushroom shoes? Bet you haven't. I have. So it has to be, number one, carbon neutral or carbon negative. Number two, scalable, that is cheap enough so people can afford it. And three, attractive enough so people will actually do it. So no Faire saying you have to dress in old flour sacks and eat nothing but tofu, because people will not do that. It has to be attractive enough. This is going to be quite a challenge for the participants, but we're giving them lots of raw material, as it were, because it's out there. I've been amazed to discover all of the thinking and all of the solutions that are already there. They're out there. They're out there.
All right, unfortunately, the red clock is telling us that we are out of time, but both of you, Young Woo, Margaret Atwood, thank you so much.
Thank you.